Hello, everyone. I'm David Harvey, and I'm your DC the DC Post First Vice President. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to the inaugural session of our first Friday's luncheon session of the year. Through commitment to offering the AACE community effective training and networking programs, the SAME DC Post is helping sustain the future of the profession with monthly educationally focused sessions to deliver topics of relevant content to our industry. Thank you for joining us here today as we kick off the program with a great topic and a great speaker, Dan Shovlin at Faithful+Gould, speaking on systems approaches for cost management. Before we start our program, I'd like everyone to go ahead and turn off your video unless you're the presenter, and also mute yourselves if you haven't already. Please feel free to use the chat to introduce yourselves to everyone, and throughout the presentation, asking questions so that we can address them during the Q&A portion towards the end of the presentation. Also, as this luncheon session for those who are joining on the East Coast, so feel free to start eating your lunch as well. Just, don't go hungry. We have people for joining us from around the world. We have registrants from Hawaii and Germany, so we're all glad you could join us, and we're happy to offer this virtual program to our community, regardless of where you are. All right, before we get started, we're going to take a moment of silence to remember our active duty military, first responders, and those who need our care and thoughts throughout the world right now. All right, thank you. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'd like to take a moment to thank our DC Post sponsors for your support. We have AMT, Christopher Consultants, Consigli, Spinoli, Stantec, WSP, Jacobs, Woods Peacock, AB Facility Services and Solutions, and Archie Consulting. Thanks for our sponsors. We truly appreciate your support. We could not put on these events without you, and we're grateful for your outstanding sponsorship. Your sponsorship helps us meet our society's goals, including providing excellent content for our members, industry and government engagement, building resilient communities, connecting with our future leaders through our students and young members groups, enriching the STEM pipeline, and preparing our military and veterans for a life after the service. If you're not already a DC Post sponsor and would like to support our post with annual sponsorship, we would love to add your names here to the list for future programs and events of this year. Please visit our website for more information about sponsorship levels and how you can give back to your community through your DC Post sponsorship. All right, now it's time for the main program. All right, so
thank you, David.
Yep, the learning objectives here, and we're going to introduce Dan. Dan's the Vice President of Faithful+Gould in the firm's Philadelphia office for the past 30 years. Dan has worked in all phases of construction management with a particular focus on cost consulting. Dan's area of expertise includes conceptual estimating, cost benchmarking and analysis, cost program management, and coordination of design and construction teams. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Dan and let him take the lead and telling us what he's got. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, so I'm Dan Shovlin. I'm as indicated, I'm with Faithful+Gould, and I'm a construction industry veteran. Been in the industry 30 years, and primarily a focus of cost estimating and cost management. So that's what I've been doing with Faithful+Gould for the past 20 years. Faithful and Gould services include program management, commercial services, and consulting, but our core strength is everything associated with cost and cost management. So this is our agenda. So we had a brief introduction. We're going to talk about cost estimating as an overview, and this lunchtime presentation is designed to be a high-level review, lunchtime review of cost estimating, the do's and don'ts, working with a cost consultant, and it's primary audience was intended to be the AE industry, but also very applicable to owners and everyone else within the industry. So the value of cost management. So this is not a new topic, right? It's been on for many years. You'll see Shakespeare. So back in the day, you draw the building. You first see it. You evaluate it, and if it doesn't meet your budget expectations, you redraw it.
Hi, Dan. Sorry, it seems like you got muted. Would you mind?
I apologize.
There we go.
Okay. Okay. So as I was saying, so this is the value of cost management. An age-old situation. Everybody doesn't have unlimited funds, so we need to work with our projects and stay within our budget constraints. And so the essence of this is cost planning. And so there's an alignment between scope, budget, and expectations. And so for our owners and our clients, we need to understand their expectations of the project. We need to develop a scope of work that's in alignment with those expectations, and then we need to create a budget that meets those parameters. So this is a continual process starting from the very beginning, and I'll touch on this in the presentation later. A very simple process of essentially reverse engineering and creating a budget from first principles that creates a budget that's in alignment with client expectations and scope. Because once one of these are out of alignment, that's when things issues arise. And for a project to be successful, there has to be expectations in alignment with scope, in alignment with the budget. So the elements of cost management and cost estimating. So what you want to do very early on is, again, establish the client goals, establish expectations. You want to create a work breakdown structure that everyone can work upon. Every client and organization is different. They have different work breakdown structures and how they want to see their budgets and their estimates. So we need to understand what that is and work accordingly, and then develop a cost plan that starts to be indicative of that work breakdown structure and the client goals. And so we espouse to keep that virtuous cycle of scope, expectations, and budget in line. That we do frequent cost checks, and that's to make sure the estimates are in line with the current design intent, and then we measure those results against the cost plan. So that's very important, and the Association of Cost Engineers has a prescribed methodology, and we'll talk about that in the presentation. So what impacts construction costs, and what's important, and what are the things that influence construction costs? So obviously geography has a big play in this. What costs $1 in Tennessee does not cost the same thing in Washington, D.C. So you have to understand geography, local labor costs and availability, and local economies, and the level of activity in that location, going to impact costs. So certainly geography has a impact on costs. Quantitative, like how much is a driver. Obviously, layout and efficiencies, and how much you build, how much square footage you build, and how big is the project. Economies of scale. Is it very small, or is it a mega project? Economies of scale will impact construction costs. Then, of course, qualitative specifications and the material types obviously have an influence here. And is it repeatable or standardization? Maybe it's unitized or panelized. Those approaches. So there's a specifications driven and materials driven aspect to construction cost. And then administrative, like how is it? What's the procurement approach, and what is that competition like in that market? And so we'll show a slide that drives home the importance of having competition in your projects. Market conditions. We all understand the past couple of years have been very challenging with inflation and cost escalations and supply chain interruptions, and we'll talk about that at the end of our presentation. And then schedule and duration. So our typical methodology to forecast for inflation costs and escalation costs is to escalate to the midpoint of construction, and that's a typical convention that captures cost at the front and the back end on an average. Important to do when you're developing budgets and estimates is to have a forward-looking cost escalation, because you price in today's dollars in what and then you need to escalate out because cost, as we've seen historically, continue to rise. So we need to factor that in. So so all these are the typical influencers of construction cost. And so, as you go through your design development process and for a capital project, this really drives home the fact that the cost opportunity to make changes is relatively painless and inexpensive at the early phase. But as you move along the design development, the cost and the pain associated with making changes increases, and so the cost of making changes when you're into the construction document phase and into construction, very painful, very expensive. And so the moral of the story for this slide is that you should work with your team, work with your cost estimator or your construction manager, or whoever's providing pre-construction services, to make some options and changes at the very early stage, so then you can take that forward. As it shows, it's very intuitive, but it's much easier, much less expensive to move lines on a paper conceptually and evaluate those, and then prior to putting full pen to paper and having all the details ironed out. So good to do those milestone estimates, and we'll talk about those estimates at different milestones that prevents this pain. And again, that virtuous circle of scope, expectations, and budget in alignment. So just some of the basic terminology and of cost estimating and what that is. So there's a process to cost estimating. What we do, because we do a lot of cost estimating, we meet the team and review the documents. There's usually there's electronic and some hard documents. So the basis of design is very critical, especially at the early stage. And I would say if there's anything that you do to convey to your team, either to a cost consultant or to a construction manager or whoever's providing pre-construction services, that a good design narrative very early on is very helpful, and that's critical to helping what the vision of the project is. Because if the design team can can put that on paper and forecast what their vision is of the project as they know it, then the team that's doing the cost estimating or cost evaluations has a good basis. And then we assign a team, we measure and quantify. If it's very early stage, we'll have some parametric or force detail. We'll put unit pricing development and put costing against that and validate it against cost benchmarks, issue a draft report, and then very important that clients and owners and design teams get a chance to comment on draft estimates and budgets. So it can make sure that that scope of work is in alignment with what's being portrayed in the budget. And so just some basic estimating definitions. So work items, what's that? That's the scope of work. That's the activities, and that's the means and methods. You're pouring concrete, you're erecting steel. So those are work items. You have the quantity takeoff. That's measurement from the documents, and we'll show examples of that. Pricing, it's a value assigned to those takeoff prices, and that's unit cost. Direct costs, that's the direct trade cost, that's the bricks and sticks. So that's important to know. Indirect costs are not part of the installation, but part of the construction cost, typically reflective of construction manager or general contractor markups. Allowances, these are cost allocations for things that are known but undefined. Best to try to portray a complete budget with allowances that are reflective again of the scope of work and those expectations. Design development allowance, that's a cost for the evolution of the design. Conceptually, you can benchmark and understand what you have now, and then we typically forecasting to a cost with a design development allowance allows you to forecast to a cost that remains relatively static as you go through the process. And so as you go from a concept to schematic design to design development, construction document, theoretically, if the scope of work stays the same, that number should remain relatively static if there's a sum of money forecasted. And so this design development allowance would start out at 15, 20%, depending on the level of design and information, and go all the way to zero when there's 100% document. So that's a budgeting tool, and that's we use that quite a bit in our practice. You have construction contingency. That's cost allowance for unforeseen conditions. You're going to need that because things happen. And then the owner's contingency, and that's held by the owner for scope changes and changes in the project. So these are basic definitions. So the elements of a cost estimate. So construction, right? And what is a construction cost? So you have your direct work, that's the bricks and sticks, as we said, and then the indirect costs. So you'll see the direct cost, that's the labor, material, equipment, and subcontracts. And if you have a particular scope of work item that we have, there's humans can install so much. So there's a productivity, there's a known wage rate, there's a cost of material, there's a cost of equipment. So the direct cost is a relatively known cost. It's reflective of again, humans being so productive. We can lay so much sheetrock down. Humans maybe have gotten a little bit more productive over the years, but there's a relatively known labor component. Material costs, you can get that from the marketplace. Equipment costs, there's a cost to run equipment and maintain, and so direct costs are relatively known. It's the indirect cost that can be a wild card and can be reflective of fluctuating market conditions. So you have taxes, which are pretty standard. General conditions, risk, and overhead. So general conditions, there's an effort to manage the project. You have to manage the trades and execute the project. So general conditions covers that, and then if that falls within a range of costs for certain types of projects, certain scale of projects, and so there's metrics on how much general conditions typically would be required to execute a project and a level of direct work. But then there's the risk and the overhead component. So somebody putting in a bid for a construction cost will evaluate the bid and say, okay, what's the risk on the project, or who am I working with, and have I had good experiences with them paying me, and or does it look like I need to work upside down on Sundays, and so there's a risk component that a contractor is going to evaluate, and then there's profit expectations, and that's going to be in relation to what can I charge. This is America, right? It's capitalist system. It's what can I get from my product, and that's an evaluation on the competition and maybe my relationship with the client. So they really almost all these items in blue, the light blue, are relatively known within metrics. It's the profit and risk contingency that are going to vary greatly and can vary from project to project, client to client. And so, those things need to be evaluated. But, there's labor, material, equipment, overhead, and profit are the standard items. And so, when somebody submits a construction cost to you, you should really, you can ask, okay, so what's the labor, what's the material, what's the equipment, and what's your overhead and profit? And that, having that, even that basic level of auditability will allow you to get a comfort that you're paying a fair price. So some of the elements of construction costs. So as we said, labor cost. So you will have it's the unit cost development with labor productivities and man hours. There's wage rates. So you have prevailing wage rates and Davis-Bacon mandated rates. You'll have union rates, and then you'll have non-union open shop rates. And really, non-union open shop could be really it's kind of bottomless. It's whatever that market will be charging. So labor cost really can be evaluated with a fair certainty. Material cost, you have to understand, okay, there's a neat amount of material being either installed or produced, and then there's a waste factor to actually do that. And so many things can be evaluated. Best to reach out for vendor quotes on current pricing, because as we know, prices are fluctuating, and contractors and vendors often are not holding costs for 2 to 3 days maybe, and it's those things that need to be evaluated with fair certainty. Equipment costs, so you'll have either company-owned equipment or rentals. So contractors need to include cost for their equipment to maintain them and contribute back for their usage, because at the end of the useful life, that needs to be replaced. So theoretically, if you've been reimbursing yourself for that equipment cost, there's a sum of money there to draw from theoretically. So important that equipment costs are part of the budget and understood. And then contractor markup, subcontractor and contractor markups with taxes and insurances and overhead and profits. So those are the major components of direct costs. And so construction trade cost development. So this is just a sampling of an estimate. And so this is a rate builder. So again, going to the first principles, you have a certain amount of labor, and there's production expectations for them for a typical crew. And so this just facilitates being able to cost that, and all the current softwares have the capability for this type of analysis. And so your construction managers, your contractors, your trade contractors, your vendors, or if they're responsible for a labor component, they're evaluating those. Construction indirect costs. So what are those? So construction management or general contractor, the builder cost. So those would be general conditions and general requirements. So general conditions being typically the staffing and accommodations to support that staffing in the direct execution of the project. And then general requirements are very site specific. So general requirements, temporary fencing, temporary security, washdown stations, soil and erosion control. So those type of costs are very site specific. So those need to be understood and are often general conditions and general requirements. They're lumped into the same category. So need to understand what those costs are. CMGC fees and those costs. So, yep, if you could mute yourself, that'd be great. Okay. CMGC fees. So those, this is obviously a money-making proposition for contractors. So you need to understand what those fees and fee structures are for the contractors. You have insurances, you have bondings, and so both the CM and general contractor and the trade will have these. So need to understand what those costs are. Markups and contingencies. We spoke about contingencies. You have construction contingency, you have project or owner contingency. They have design development allowance, which is reflective of the level of detail that you're evaluating. You have that construction contingency that covers unforeseen events. As soon as you dig into the ground, you didn't expect that vault was there, so that's an unforeseen event. So there needs to be money to cover those kind of events. And then the owner project budget that the owner controls, and if he decides to make adjustments on the project or alters the scope of work, there needs to be a sum of money to address that. And then you'll have soft costs and owner costs, and this is part of a greater project budget. You have permits, land acquisitions, those types of fees. You'll have design and engineering, other professional fees that go along with that. You'll have furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and then you'll have the owner administration. So these indirect costs, if you were developing a project budget, need to be evaluated. So, what the typical process is. So you establish that WBS. We said, we want to present our budgets and our estimates in alignment with owner conventions and their accounting principles, because everyone has a different structure. We go through and determine the direct cost, that the bricks and sticks. What is that? And then we'll do that by quantifying and looking at the specifications. We'll come up with a cost. We'll adjust that pricing based on factors. Is it a very hot market? Is it or is there certain aspects of the project that are challenging? So those costs will be adjusted. We'll identify the indirect costs. So those contingencies and fees and owner administration costs and all those other costs, and come up with a budget. So that's a typical process, and this is all in trying to align, again, scope, expectations, and the budget, which is the virtuous aim of doing this estimating and budget, is to make sure we can build the scope of work within the prescribed budget. And so our cost estimate formats, there's a few different approaches. Uniformat is a systems-based approach, and that's very intuitive. It's essentially how a project gets built. You have foundations, superstructure, exterior closure. You have the interior, and so it's very intuitive, and it's very useful for cost benchmarking. Most all the work that we do, if it's not already in a systems-based format, we'll put it into that. in order to put it into historical cost benchmarking when it's so. If you have a project and there is some misalignment, you definitely want to understand the cost drivers, and so the Uniformat systems allows you to do that. So where am I spending my money? Is it in the foundations? Is it in the exterior wall? And you have the CSI or trade formats. You can say, okay, I have X dollars in concrete, but where is that concrete being spent? Is it in the foundations? Is it in the precast? So both are very useful. You're going to be bidding out these projects, and so an estimate needs to be turned into a budget and compared to trade bids. So that'll be done with a CSI format. So these important to delineate how you're going to be doing your estimating or budgeting. But really, with today's software systems, you can toggle typically between both. And so just a comparison of Masterformat versus Uniformat. So again, Masterformat is material based, and so you have concrete, masonry, metals, woods, plastics, and the like. And then on the right is the systems based. We have substructure, shell, interior, site work, and general construction. So and just a graphical depiction of that. You'll have CSI headings of site work, concrete, metals, thermal and moisture protection, and masonry. And then in the Uniformat, you'll have foundations, basement construction, superstructure, and exterior closure. So, it's important to understand what your format is going to be, and again, utilizing that for benchmarking in a systems fashion is advantageous. And the Uniformat headings can be very specific, and it's from superstructure, shell, interiors, through to building services. Often you'll want to identify what the services and those costs are. If it's a complex high technology project, those costs are going to prevail. So having an understanding of a systems based estimate or system based cost is very helpful to understand your cost drivers. And so, some of the estimating tools, estimating has evolved. I've been doing this for many years. We were all happy when we had digitizers, and then all of a sudden, we started to be able to do 2D takeoff off of PDFs, and now we've evolved to being able to do BIM takeoff, material quantification off of BIM models. And so, that aspect has evolved and made the industry much more efficient, but there's still a degree of understanding the project and understanding those quantities. Having a BIM model, not every BIM model is created equal, and so for the estimating professional to estimate, they need a certain quantity in a certain and described in a certain way, and often that's not the way the design team has evolved with the model. So there needs to be some alignment there and agreement on what that would be. There's a standard method of measurements, and we'll talk about that. There is a international standard for measuring a project and depicting what those quantities are and describing those quantities. In the United States, it's more of a Wild West approach. Contractors will give you a lump sum number, and you kind of ask for detail, and you get something back. Your estimating professional is likely going to provide a detailed report with quantities and unit costs, and it's important that your professionals give you an appropriate level of detail. And so the standard method of measurement, and we'll show you some examples of that, helps to achieve a standardized base of costing. which is helpful. And so there's many commercially available softwares, and we're using a tool, Destiny, for estimating and benchmarking. And so we have an in-house group that benchmarks all of our construction costs. And if you do engage a cost estimator or cost consultant or even a construction manager, there should be expectations that they could give you some historical cost of the types of projects that you're building. And so that often will form a baseline, an initial baseline of a construction cost or a project budget. And so you want to understand those costs as you apply them to your project and then carry your project forth. And just an example of 2D Takeoff, very auditable, very helpful when you go into discussions about cost and cost estimating. There's often a reconciliation process that goes on if there's a cost consultant and a construction manager, and so both entities have attempted the quantity survey, and so this is very helpful to graphically represent what was assumed, what was estimated, and this often is helpful in defining the scope and really acts as a scoping document and allows the team to understand what the assumptions were at this time. So it's the advent of graphical quantification, very helpful to the estimating and having them portray and defend what their costs are. This BIM is very good if set up in the correct fashion and in a usable way. Quantities are extracted very quickly and efficiently, and we estimated a hospital 18,000 tons. If we would have had to have done that the old-fashioned way, 2D, putting it in a spreadsheet and putting pounds to it and coming up with a poundage and a tonnage versus extracting it from a BIM model. It was probably took us 2 days versus 2 weeks to do that type of analysis. So BIM, if set up properly, can be a very, very useful tool in efficiently quantifying the project. So I touched upon the standard method of measurements, and so there is a defined fashion for this internationally, and some countries utilize this or mandate this. Some don't. United States being one of those that don't. But important to understand that there can be and could be a way to do this. And so, take for instance the masonry units. So you have the specification, and so it's understanding what the specification of the item is, and then going ahead and identifying it, what drawing it's on, referencing the actual detail and the items measured, the face brick, the anchors, the CMU, and then that's portrayed in a very detailed description that doesn't leave a lot to the unknown. And so there's 7,000 square feet of this assembly and this item, and so the unit cost would be apportioned accordingly. Now, if contractors bidding a bill of these would be a bill of quantities, contractor bids a bill of quantities, they apply their unit pricing to that bill of quantities. You get 5, 6 of those bids all bidding the same bill of quantities. It's a very structured process. Tends to have very structured outcomes. And so a quick, easy comparison between bidders can be had. And so that's just a sample of what the rest of the world does. And you could mandate that if you so chose. And so design cost control. As we said, our clients and owners don't have unlimited funds typically, and so there is an element of design cost control that needs to happen. And so again, balancing expectation, scope, and budget. That's the the holy grail, right? And that's that we have to do that right from the beginning, right at the onset. When again we saw that cost opportunity, doing analysis and optioneering very early is effective, not painful. Doing it as things are developed and drawings are developed and into construction, changing things, very costly, very painful. And so, this just having cost control and is just improves value and supports the design process. It mitigates risk in terms of cost and schedule impacts related to redesign. If you want to do frequent checks, make sure your costs are in line at the appropriate milestones, so that you don't have an unaligned budget versus the client expectations and scope. So if you have to do a redesign, again, painful, costly, time consuming, and just you want accountability throughout the whole team, right? You have the design team, the owner team, and whoever's participating in that pre-construction development. Everyone has a place in having accountability in order to make sure that the expectation, scope, and budget are in alignment. So, typical AE responsibilities, and just good practice generally is those regular estimates at design milestones, and then we would typically you want that draft estimate to be reviewed and endorsed by the design team because maybe there's something that they know that needs to be included within the scope of work. So that needs to be done. You want to understand those cost drivers and saying, okay, wow, this budget is more than what we expected. Well, what's driving that? Oh, that exterior closure. We thought, again, that specification. The gold cladded exterior was very expensive, and so maybe we need to change that. And changing out systems theoretically, conceptually, very easy to do, and we'll touch on that. And these are the typical design estimates, design phase estimates, as defined by the AACE, the Association of Cost Engineers. So you got programming, class 4, class 3 is conceptual or schematic, class 2 design development, and class 1 construction document. So a programming estimate. So that's you're going to have maybe it could be 4 lines on the paper and a general square footage. So that's would be order of magnitude or conceptual. Some of the inputs would be a basic plan or just some basic basis of design. And so you have some cost outputs with relevant contingencies, and there's a defined accuracy as you go through the milestone estimates. But every estimator or whoever is doing the estimate will be different, and typically my clients need something with a little more certainty, between 30 to 50%. So minus 30 plus 50. So and we typically provide that due to the fact that we have a lot of relevant data and cost information, and so whoever is doing your budgeting should be a professional that has access to that benchmark information and an understanding of costs, where you can possibly get a closer accuracy range. Same thing, class 3 is concept or typically called schematic. And so, that's a lot of feasibility estimates. We do quite a bit of feasibility estimates because a client wants to understand their cost position. So they commission the design team to do a basic study, and then we put pricing to that, and so they can start to get an understanding if their expectations, scope, and budget have some sort of alignment. This is often this is the first go around of budget alignment, and so it's important. Design development. So you've gone down a certain path, and your design progresses. And this is a very important estimate. I think it's early enough where you can make altering decisions, but not so defined where it's going to be so painful and so costly. So if you had limited funds and you needed to do and spend those money on a certain estimate, the design development estimate will be that estimate that can define your project with a fair degree of certainty. But yet, if you needed to make changes and do a value engineering process to get you within budget, this would be the estimate to invest in. Again, class 1, that's a construction document. It's going out to bid. You want to understand what that cost is. It's an evolution of the design development estimate, but maybe scope has changed or creeped or went in a different direction. You want to understand what the potential costs are coming back from the bidders. Maybe in that 5-6 months, the market has changed. There's some sort of supply chain issue, and you have a heavy steel project. So you want to understand what that is, so you can compare when the bids come in, what those what those costs are, and if they're fair and reflective of the marketplace. So design cost control example. I mean, very, very simple. It's the owner identifies, okay, I have a certain amount of money, and it's incumbent upon the team to design to that cost, and so we typically develop a cost model in a work breakdown structure that's familiar to the client. And then you would test, trade off, and retest. So you have it really is reverse engineering. The owner has 10 million. You got to remove the indirect costs, right? So typically 25%, good place to start. You have a project cost of 7.5 million, less the owner cost. So really the construction, you have about $6 million left for construction, right? And so how is that apportioned? From a benchmarking, you allocate amongst the pieces and see if that makes sense. Substructure, superstructure, exterior walls. So if that doesn't make sense, you again test, trade off, retest, and see if you could get cost in alignment with scope, in alignment with expectations. So very simple exercise you can do at a very early stage, conceptually, with your teams, to understand, okay, I have $10 million, can I even possibly achieve what I think we want to achieve with this project? And so a overall project budget, what does that consist of? So it's typically like all the site costs. You have the hard costs, again, the bricks and sticks, and then you have the soft costs. So the site would be the land cost, surveys, typically site work and those costs. Again, you have the buildings with the interiors, core and shell, and then the fit out, and then you have all the other soft costs to make the project complete and to actually develop and build it. So you got to pay taxes, permits, fees. You have the owner's cost, the designer's cost, and all those indirect costs that we spoke of. So this would define a total project budget. So you're working with your cost professional, whether they be your construction manager, your general contractor, your cost consultant. The size of the project matters, right? Does the color matter? No. So you have to understand what matters and drives costs. It's the size, it's efficiency, like we spoke of in those initial cost drivers. It's the program, what kind of program, that functional narrative, that basis of design is very important. But some of the other approaches and things are not cost drivers. So if you're going to give your team any information, make sure it's things that drive costs. Again, competition. I spoke of competition. So this is the standard competition curve. So pretty pretty intuitive again, but it's driving home the fact that you should get a representative number of bids for your project, make it attractive enough where you attract those bidders, because at the end of the day, one or two opinions of cost are not necessarily good for the budget, and historically they are not. If you want to achieve your budget, good 4, 5, 6 bidders is historically, statistically, achieves a more favorable budget. Having and exponentially improves if you have a good number of bidders, good competition. Again, so that direct work is, all those blue items are pretty static. They're going to be known through through all the bidders. It's that contingency and risk piece. Make your projects palatable, attractive, and then there will be some competition, and that will be favorable for your budgets. So just briefly, cost consultant versus your construction manager. So important to have both. So your cost consultant will bring, it's independent view. It's a check and balance. It's often data-driven information. We estimate thousands of projects, much more than a construction manager or general contractor will bid or build. So it gives a fresh view of the project. So good to have that point of view. And then your construction professional will bring the methodology, the phasing, the logistics, what those costs are. They'll have some real-time feedback from their subcontractors and vendors, and so really the convergence of these is best in some sort of reconciliation. It provides a very solid budget when the two estimates are reconciled, and so then you can be pretty well rest assured that the scope has been covered, and the project is estimated and costed relative current market conditions. So a good process to go to in order to make that scope in alignment with the budget and the expectations. So just in closing, just to touch base on market conditions, ever fluctuating. We produce a monthly report on construction economics, and over year, you'll see that the annual change has been pretty dramatic for producer price inputs, and these are the inputs to construction. And so construction materials generally over 20%, nearly 25% over the last year. So significant increases in construction cost, and these are just by general industries. Some of the inputs into those types of projects specifically. So again, following 25% increases over the last year. Steel price in particular, fluctuates. This just shows you the trend of steel prices from 2008. Had been steady there for many years until just post 2020 at the pandemic, and so cost in the United States shot up from $500-600 a ton, and this is for the mill steel, up to nearly $1,600, $1,800, $1,900. So fairly dramatic increase. Has come down a bit, but is looking to go back up. So as we said, you need to as part of your estimate and your project budgeting, need to get good timely evaluations of pricing, especially for these types of materials that have shown to fluctuate. Yeah, interestingly, so this just graphs the bid price versus the construction input cost. So there's been relative divergence between the increase in cost and what the bidders are able to charge. So this shows in 2022 that there's been significant increases in construction costs, but what's being able to be passed on to the owners is a fraction of that. Although these two are starting, if the next graph will be for Q1, there'll be a coming together and a convergence where contractors are being able to pass more and more of those costs therefore they're making their way into bids and budgets. So so being forewarned that for the next 6, 8, 10, 12 months, we anticipate bid cost to be able to capture more and more of those cost increases that they themselves are experiencing. And just finally, just to touch upon supply chain issues, that's they impact construction cost, and so there's been supply shortages around the world, shipping issues, there's semiconductor shortfalls, so all those things contribute to increases in construction costs, and so there's certain methodologies to mitigate that, and most of them are procurement and schedule driven, being able to buy materials and solidify purchase orders and purchases ahead of time will help mitigate some of that risk. But it's something to be understood and again evaluated quite frequently. And this all plays a part in developing a good budget that again aligns scope with expectations and budgets. And that's what I have for today.
Hey, well, thanks, Dan, for coming today. Lots of great information in your presentation and very timely, especially for I know from the organization that I'm leading here, we have a number of engineers that are involved in cost estimation, and it's a very tricky time in the environment, as you pointed out there at the end. And so, a great overview of the basics, and I'll be making this available for our staff when the recording comes out.
Great.
So I don't know if I don't see any questions. Any typing questions here. I know there was some chat about trying to figure out how much cost adders to do for secret projects, how much you should add. There was some little chat on that. I'm not sure that maybe that got all taken down. Here's one question here from, let's see, Marcus Garcia. Is your firm or RS means, is your firm with Destiny tools, or RS means starting to incorporate more or better data for sustainability projects?
Yeah, I mean we're getting more and more exposure to sustainable projects, and so it's often good design practices, and so our budgeting falls in line with that, and so we are getting more and more exposure, and estimating and is one of those things. The more you do, the more data intelligence you gain, and then you utilize that.
Yep.
It's virtuous, and it builds upon itself. So we're starting to get more and more involved in these projects. Before it was lead and what those costs are, and that's good design practice as it is. But then we're taking it to the next level with the high degrees of sustainability. And so we're starting to get exposure and to those costs for sure. Yeah.
Great. All right. All right. So I see John's questions. Where the recording be available? Well, maybe we can it's going to be on our DC Post, same.org/DC Post website. I think maybe Bree can type that into the chat to have everyone know that. But maybe we can move on here for the interest of time to let you mark your calendars for our next upcoming events. We have, I think, JETSI is next week, so all those are kind of heading out to Colorado. You guys can regroup there. Specifically for the DC Post, what we got coming up is at the end of the month here is a luncheon that's going to be an in-person event at the Army Navy Club that's located in Farragut Square, downtown DC, close to the Red Line. DC Post will be joined by Design Build Institute of America Mid-Atlantic Conference Chapter to host a program on alternative project delivery. It's going to feature NIST and NSA, who have kind of robust design build programs. This program is very popular, so you can register early. The next First Friday session is going to be on June, I think June 3rd, with Gannett Fleming, George O'Lear, and they're going to be talking about modular constructions. So that will be also offered free of charge for members with the PDH hours, as this event had been. And if your firm would like to has an educational topic that would like to be included in the sessions, there's an online form off of our website that you can put on there. And we're still booking the calendar starting in September, and looking forward to hosting experts similar to what we heard today from Dan. And then I think one other thing here, we're excited to start sharing our annual joint conferences with AACES, MW, and CMA, May, and CCC for major construction project trends, strategies, and opportunities on June 23rd, again at the Army Navy Club as well. So that will be opening up. Registration will be opening up at the end of the month. And we have one more list of chock full events here of other stuff that's coming up from the DC Post. All of this is available on our website. We got plenty of things rolling, plenty of opportunities for both virtual and in-person events to connect and network. So look forward to seeing you at some of those upcoming events if you can. Again, thank you all for attending the first Friday luncheon session. There's going to be some document deliveries coming with the PDH certificates through the Everbright system later today. And again, this recording will be posted on the DC Post website later in the week. And just one final reminder, if you're an AIA member, you should send your number to Rebeal if you want to receive AIA credit for the program. So with that, and right at the top of the hour, have a great weekend, and look forward to seeing you at the at an in-person or virtual event soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
If anybody has time to stay, perhaps Dan can answer some additional questions that were in the chat.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I see a question about percent bump for lead projects. Yeah, we do have rules of thumb for lead premiums. Yes, typically base silver is with the design. A good practice today is so there's no real premium for that. It's within within the range of cost. But as you increase gold, platinum, silver, gold, platinum, there's rules of thumb ranging from 1 to 2% to maybe 3 to 4%. If you're interjecting specialized systems and and those types of things to achieve the LEED certification. So we do see typical range of cost for those items.
So Dan, I just got a question. Do you, the graphic, the report, the cost construction report, is that a product your company sells?
Actually, it's free. If and you can tell the membership if they want to get a copy of that monthly. We just need a copy of the we just need their email address, and that will come out. That comes out monthly, free of charge. Yep.
So if I send you that my email address, you can put us on there, because that could help us to justify to Congress what the hell's going on with our Buy America, Build America. Oh, sorry, we're still being recorded here. Anyways, you didn't touch upon policy problems that can cause.
Well, that's a.
I don't know.
I'm a little more. I'm a little bit more bricks and sticks here.
Okay.
Yeah. Those supply chain outside influences. Yep. No. Those are.
You're good to stay far away from that.
Yeah. You have that. I know I saw a question about the government's index versus, and we reference the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and so that's primarily where those items come from for the report. But we also reference our own practice, and we do estimates and budgeting and reconcile with the market on a daily basis. So we get some good feedback that's typically in alignment with what the government bureau is indicating. So the Association of General Contractors has similar. So we take all that available information coupled with our practice experience, and then formulate some information for our clients, and we use that in our practice as well. So it's helpful.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Bree.
Okay.
For everything. All right. We'll talk to you later.
Thank
Nice
you.
to meet you, Dan. Take care.
Nice to meet you. Take care.